The conference room felt smaller than usual that Tuesday morning. I stood there, frozen, watching my boss Marcus hand the promotion envelope to Tyler, his nephew. My promotion. The one I'd earned after 3 years of 60-hour weeks, missed family dinners, and sacrificed weekends. Tyler grinned like he'd just won the lottery, which I suppose he had. My hands trembled at my sides, nails digging into my palms hard enough to leave crescent-shaped marks. The room buzzed with awkward whispers. Everyone knew what was happening. Everyone could see the blatant injustice unfolding before their eyes. But nobody said a word. Nobody dared challenge Marcus. He didn't even look at me as he shook Tyler's hand, clapping him on the shoulder like a proud father celebrating his son's achievement. "Congratulations, Tyler. You've really earned this opportunity," Marcus announced loudly. Earned it? Tyler had been here exactly 4 months. He couldn't even work the printer without calling IT for help. I wanted to scream. To flip the conference table. To tell Marcus exactly what kind of snake he was. Instead, I forced a smile. A tight, professional smile that probably looked more like a grimace. "Congratulations," I managed to say through clenched teeth, my voice steadier than I felt inside. "My name is Samantha Reed," and that was the moment everything changed for me. I walked back to my desk in complete shock, my legs feeling like rubber beneath me. The office felt different now, transformed into something foreign and hostile. I was seeing it through a stranger's eyes, noticing things I'd overlooked before. My coworkers gave me sympathetic looks but quickly turned away when I made eye contact. Nobody wanted to acknowledge the elephant stomping through the room. I sat down heavily in my chair and stared at my computer screen, not really seeing the spreadsheets and emails waiting for my attention. 3 years. 3 long years of arriving first and leaving last, of being the reliable one everyone counted on. 3 years of fixing other people's mistakes, taking on extra projects nobody else wanted, working through lunch breaks and staying late. 3 years of believing that hard work and dedication actually mattered in the corporate world. What a complete joke that belief had been. I thought about marching straight into Marcus's corner office right then and there. About telling him exactly what I thought of his blatant nepotism and his fake corporate values speech from last month about merit and fairness. But that would be incredibly stupid and emotional. It would give him exactly what he wanted, a reason to label me difficult, unprofessional, maybe even unstable. No, if I was going to fight this injustice, I needed to be much smarter about my approach. That evening, I went home to my small apartment and did something I'd never done before in my entire working life. I opened a bottle of red wine at 7 o'clock on a Tuesday evening and sat on my couch, just thinking and processing everything. My apartment felt too quiet, almost oppressively empty. Usually by this time, I'd already be answering urgent emails or reviewing reports for the next day's meetings. But tonight, I desperately needed to clear my head and think strategically. The more I replayed the scene in my mind, the angrier I became. But underneath that burning anger was something else growing stronger. Determination. Cold, calculated determination. Marcus had made his move today. A bold, arrogant move that showed exactly how little he thought of me and my contributions. But he'd also made a critical mistake that he didn't even realize yet. He'd severely underestimated me and what I was capable of. Tyler was completely incompetent. That much was obvious to anyone actually paying attention instead of protecting family. He'd been coasting purely on his uncle's protection since his first day, consistently showing up late, missing important deadlines, and blaming others for his constant failures. Eventually, people would start noticing the pattern. And when they finally did, I'd make absolutely sure all eyes were focused directly on his disastrous performance. I'd make sure there was solid evidence everywhere. Cold, documented, undeniable proof that couldn't be ignored, dismissed, or explained away by anyone. The next morning, I arrived at work 45 minutes early with a completely new mindset and strategy. I wasn't the heartbroken, defeated employee anymore. I was now a detective carefully gathering evidence for an important case. I watched Tyler closely during our regular morning team meeting. He rambled incoherently through his project update, clearly unprepared and disorganized, constantly mixing up project names, client requirements, and crucial deadlines. Marcus jumped in twice to correct his obvious errors, making transparent excuses about Tyler still learning the ropes and getting familiar with our processes. But I noticed something important. Mrs. Patterson, our CEO, was frowning slightly from her position at the head of the polished conference table. She didn't say anything out loud, but her skeptical expression spoke volumes to those paying attention. After the meeting ended, I went straight home during lunch and started a private, detailed document on my personal laptop. A comprehensive log of every mistake, every missed deadline, every glaring instance of incompetence I personally witnessed from Tyler. I carefully dated everything, included specific details and names, and kept the entire document purely factual and objective. No emotions, no personal opinions, no angry rants. Just verifiable facts that anyone could independently check and confirm. This was going to be my insurance policy, my ammunition for when the right moment finally arrived. And I'd make absolutely sure that moment came sooner rather than later, before more damage could be done to our team. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched Tyler crash and burn in slow motion like a train wreck you couldn't look away from. He missed a crucial client deadline for the Anderson account, immediately blaming it on unclear instructions even though I'd personally sent him a detailed, step-by-step email with absolutely everything he needed to succeed. He scheduled an important stakeholder meeting for the completely wrong time, making our entire frustrated team wait for 30 long minutes while he scrambled to figure out how to join the video call. He submitted a quarterly financial report so filled with basic errors and miscalculations that Heather from accounting had to send it back 3 separate times for corrections. Each embarrassing mistake went directly into my growing log with timestamps and documentation. Date, time, detailed description, measurable impact on team productivity and morale. I also started doing something more strategic and visible. Whenever Tyler inevitably dropped the ball on something important, I quietly picked it up and fixed it before it became a complete disaster for everyone. I stayed late to personally ensure projects crossed the finish line on time and met quality standards. But I made absolutely sure the right people knew about my extra contributions. Not in an obvious, show-off way, I wasn't trying to be arrogant or attention-seeking. I just made certain my substantial contributions were clearly visible and properly documented in professional emails that carefully copied the right people in management and leadership positions who needed to see the truth. Marcus started noticing my increased efforts after about 3 weeks. Not Tyler's mounting mistakes, he seemed completely blind to those glaring problems. But he definitely noticed that projects were still somehow getting completed successfully despite Tyler's obvious incompetence dragging everything down. One afternoon, he casually stopped by my desk while I was finishing a client proposal. "Samantha, I've been meaning to personally thank you. You've really been stepping up your game lately and going above and beyond." I looked up from my computer screen, carefully keeping my expression completely neutral and professional. "Just doing my job to the best of my ability, Marcus." "Well, I genuinely appreciate your dedication and effort. Team players like you make my job so much easier." He smiled warmly, completely oblivious to how deeply insulting his careless words actually were. Team player. Corporate code language for someone who does all the real work while others take the credit and recognition. I smiled back politely. Happy to help the team succeed. As he walked away feeling good about himself, I immediately added our brief conversation to my detailed log. More evidence of clear acknowledgement that I was essentially carrying the entire team on my shoulders. Words and admissions I would definitely need later when the time was right. The key to my entire strategy was patience and discipline. I couldn't afford to rush this carefully laid plan. I had to let Tyler fail spectacularly on his own while I simultaneously built an absolutely undeniable case demonstrating my own consistent value and contributions. 3 weeks after the devastating promotion announcement, unexpected opportunity knocked loudly. Mrs. Patterson sent out a company-wide email requesting a comprehensive performance report from each department head. Standard quarterly review procedure, but the timing couldn't possibly have been better for my purposes. Marcus would be required to submit detailed data on team performance, including individual contributions, project outcomes, and measurable results. This was my big chance. I'd been meticulously tracking everything in my private log for weeks, but now I needed to make absolutely sure the official company records told exactly the same story. I started working even longer hours, making sure every single project I touched had crystal clear documentation of my specific involvement and contributions. I sent detailed summary emails after important meetings, always carefully copying Marcus so he couldn't claim ignorance later. I created comprehensive project trackers that clearly showed who did what and when, with timestamps and deliverables. I wasn't actively trying to sabotage Tyler, he was doing that perfectly well himself without any help. I was simply making sure the objective truth was completely impossible to ignore, deny, or sweep under the corporate rug. Because in exactly 2 weeks, Mrs. Patterson would carefully review those quarterly reports. And I was going to make absolutely certain mine was thoroughly detailed and completely flawless. Tyler's biggest and most spectacular failure came on a Thursday afternoon I'll never forget. He'd been put in charge of the important Henderson account, one of our biggest and most valuable clients. It was supposed to be his golden chance to finally prove himself worthy of the promotion Marcus had handed him. The crucial presentation was scheduled for exactly 2 o'clock. At 1:45, I watched Tyler panic visibly in the glass conference room, frantically fumbling with his laptop like it was a bomb about to explode. The presentation file was completely corrupted and wouldn't open. He hadn't bothered to back it up anywhere. He'd also somehow mixed up the Henderson client's specific requirements with another company's completely different needs. It was an absolute disaster unfolding in real time. Marcus was visibly sweating, desperately trying to salvage the terrible situation. I sat quietly in the corner, my own backup files ready and waiting on my tablet. Finally, Marcus turned to me with desperation in his eyes. "Samantha, please tell me you have anything we can possibly use?" I did. A complete, professional presentation I'd prepared just in case something went wrong, based on the correct client data and requirements. I smoothly walked them through it, confidently answering every detailed question Henderson's team asked. The client left the meeting satisfied and impressed. Tyler looked relieved he'd escaped disaster. Marcus looked pathetically grateful. But I'd noticed something crucially important. Mrs. Patterson had been quietly observing on the video call, watching and carefully evaluating everything that happened. After the Henderson presentation disaster and rescue, something significant shifted in the office atmosphere. Mrs. Patterson started showing up to more of our regular team meetings. She'd sit quietly in the back of the room, observing carefully, taking detailed notes on her tablet. Marcus didn't seem particularly concerned by her presence. If anything, he seemed pleased by the extra attention, probably thinking it meant his department was considered important and successful. But I knew better from my years of corporate experience. CEOs don't randomly audit departments that are running smoothly and meeting expectations. They investigate carefully when something doesn't add up correctly. I kept my head down and continued my deliberate strategy without deviation. Work hard, document absolutely everything, let Tyler's incompetence speak loudly for itself. I also started quietly building strategic alliances with key people. Heather from accounting, who'd dealt repeatedly with Tyler's sloppy, error-filled expense reports. James from IT, who'd had to constantly fix Tyler's basic technical mistakes and problems. I didn't gossip or openly complain about the situation. I just listened sympathetically when they vented their frustrations and nodded understandingly. These workplace relationships would matter significantly when the truth finally came out. Because it was definitely coming soon. I could feel it building in the office atmosphere, like electricity crackling in the air right before a massive storm finally breaks. The quarterly performance reports were due on Friday afternoon. Marcus spent all of Thursday locked in his office with the door firmly closed, probably scrambling desperately to make Tyler's terrible numbers look somehow decent and acceptable. I'd submitted my detailed individual report 3 full days early. It was 20 comprehensive pages of detailed project summaries, positive client feedback, and measurable outcomes with hard numbers. Every single claim was backed by solid data and documentation. Every achievement was documented with specific dates and verifiable evidence. I didn't mention Tyler's name even once. I didn't have to say anything negative. My excellent work spoke loudly for itself. On Friday afternoon, Marcus finally emerged from his office looking absolutely exhausted and stressed. He'd clearly worked incredibly hard to polish and spin his department report favorably. I wondered how he'd explained the glaring discrepancies, the projects that somehow succeeded despite Tyler being supposedly in charge, the clients who specifically requested to work directly with me instead of the person who'd gotten promoted. That evening, I went home and waited patiently. The next important move wasn't mine to make. It was Mrs. Patterson's decision now. And I had a strong feeling she'd already seen everything she needed to see to understand the real situation. Monday morning arrived with an unexpected email from Mrs. Patterson's executive assistant. Please report to the executive conference room at 10 o'clock sharp. No explanation provided, no context given. Just the formal summons. I dressed extra carefully that morning, choosing my best professional outfit from the closet. Navy blue suit, simple but elegant jewelry, hair pulled back neatly. I looked like someone ready for a promotion, not a confrontation. When I arrived at the executive conference room at exactly 10, Marcus was already there, looking visibly nervous and uncomfortable. Tyler sat beside him, looking confused about why he'd been summoned. Mrs. Patterson sat at the head of the long table, my detailed performance report open in front of her. Thank you for coming promptly, Samantha, she said, gesturing to the empty chair directly across from Marcus. I've been carefully reviewing the quarterly reports, and I have some important questions. Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Of course, Mrs. Patterson. Whatever you need to know. She looked directly at me with sharp, intelligent eyes. Samantha, according to these reports, you've been the lead contributor on 17 major projects this quarter alone. Is that accurate? I nodded calmly. Yes, ma'am, that's correct. And Tyler here has been credited as project manager on 12 of those same projects. She looked at Marcus. Can you explain that discrepancy to me? Marcus cleared his throat nervously, launching into a long explanation about team collaboration and shared responsibilities across the department. How Tyler was still learning the ropes and I was generously mentoring him. How success should be shared across the entire team. Mrs. Patterson listened without any expression, her face unreadable. When Marcus finally finished his explanation, she turned to Tyler directly. Tyler, can you walk me through the Henderson presentation from last week? The one that saved the account. Tyler froze completely. Well, there were some unexpected technical difficulties. Who actually prepared the final presentation that saved the account? Mrs. Patterson asked directly. Heavy silence filled the room. Tyler looked desperately at Marcus. Marcus looked down at his hands. I said absolutely nothing, letting the uncomfortable silence do all the work. Finally, Tyler mumbled quietly, Samantha did. Mrs. Patterson nodded slowly, closing the report folder. Marcus, I'd like to see you in my office in exactly 1 hour. Come alone. She stood up, signaling the meeting was over. As she walked past me toward the door, she paused briefly. Good work on those reports, Samantha. Very thorough and professional. After she left, Marcus glared at me like this entire situation was somehow my fault. But I just smiled politely and went back to work. The next few days were incredibly tense throughout the entire office. Marcus spent most of his time in closed-door meetings with Mrs. Patterson and the other senior executives. Tyler walked around looking worried and anxious, finally understanding that his free ride might be ending soon. I kept working as if nothing had changed. But I noticed important things happening around me. Mrs. Patterson started carefully reviewing old project files, going back many months. She interviewed other team members privately, asking detailed questions about workflow and individual contributions. She brought in someone from corporate headquarters to audit our department's records thoroughly. Marcus tried hard to act normal, but I could clearly see the panic in his eyes. He knew exactly what was happening. He played favorites with his nephew and now all the evidence was catching up with him. I didn't gloat or celebrate. I didn't gossip with coworkers. I just showed up every single day, did excellent work, and waited patiently. Because I'd learned something incredibly important over the past few weeks. Revenge doesn't have to be loud or dramatic. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting the truth speak for itself. And the truth was very loud right now. 2 weeks after that tense conference room meeting, Mrs. Patterson personally called me to her office. Not a formal summons this time. A personal invitation. Please, sit down, Samantha, she said warmly, gesturing to the comfortable chair across from her impressive desk. Her office was stunning, floor-to-ceiling windows, elegant furniture, walls lined with achievement awards. I sat down, trying not to show my nervousness. I want to thank you for your honesty and professionalism, Mrs. Patterson began. Your performance reports revealed some very concerning patterns in Marcus's department. Patterns that required immediate investigation. I nodded, still not sure what to say. The audit is complete, she continued. And the findings are absolutely clear. You've been carrying that entire team for over a year while Tyler has been coasting on his uncle's protection. That's completely unacceptable. Not in my company. She opened a folder on her desk. I'm offering you the position that should have been yours 2 months ago. Senior Project Manager, effective immediately. With full back pay from the date Marcus gave the role to Tyler. I felt tears prick my eyes but blinked them back. Thank you, Mrs. Patterson. There's more, Mrs. Patterson said, leaning back in her leather chair. Marcus has been placed on a formal performance improvement plan. He'll remain as department head for now, but his authority is significantly limited and he'll be closely monitored. Tyler is being moved to a junior position in a completely different department, where he'll actually have to learn the job properly. She paused, studying my face carefully. I suspect this might make your work environment uncomfortable. If you prefer a transfer to a different department, I can arrange that immediately. I thought about it for a long moment. The easy path would definitely be to leave, to start fresh somewhere else without all the awkwardness. But that felt like running away. I'd like to stay, I said firmly. If that's all right. Mrs. Patterson smiled approvingly. I was hoping you'd say that. We need people with your integrity and work ethic. People who do the right thing even when it's not easy. As I left her office, I felt lighter than I had in months. Not because of the promotion or the salary increase, though those were certainly nice. But because I'd been vindicated. The system had worked, eventually. Justice had won. The announcement went out that afternoon. A company-wide email explaining the organizational changes. My promotion. Tyler's reassignment. Marcus's new status. Within minutes, my inbox flooded with congratulations messages. Some were genuine. Some were from people who'd ignored me when Tyler got promoted but now wanted to celebrate my success. I responded politely to all of them. When I returned to my desk, I found a small crowd waiting. Heather from accounting hugged me tightly. James from IT shook my hand enthusiastically. Even some people I barely knew stopped by to say they were glad things worked out. Marcus wasn't in the office. Apparently, he'd left right after getting the news. Tyler was cleaning out his desk, his usual smirk replaced with embarrassment. I walked past him without comment. There was nothing to say. He'd gotten exactly what he deserved, just like I had. That evening, I celebrated with Chinese takeout and a glass of wine at home. Nothing fancy. Just quiet satisfaction and the knowledge that I'd won the right way. Without compromising my integrity or playing dirty. The next few weeks brought changes I honestly hadn't expected. With my new position came real authority and decision-making power. I could make important decisions without waiting for Marcus's approval. I could shape projects from the very beginning instead of fixing them at the end. I could finally implement ideas I'd been suggesting for years. Marcus and I barely spoke anymore. When we had to interact, he was coldly professional, clearly resenting having to answer to someone he'd passed over. But his opinion didn't matter anymore. Mrs. Patterson had made it crystal clear who she trusted. I hired 2 new team members to replace Tyler and handle the workload properly. Both were qualified, experienced professionals who'd been overlooked at other companies. I wasn't going to make the same mistakes Marcus had. Competence mattered. Merit mattered. Results mattered. The team's performance improved dramatically within a month. Projects finished on time. Clients stopped complaining. Other departments actually wanted to collaborate with us again. It turned out that when you promote people based on ability instead of family connections, everyone benefits. 3 months after my promotion, Marcus resigned. The official reason was pursuing other opportunities, but everyone knew the truth. Working under someone he tried to sabotage was too much for his ego. Mrs. Patterson offered me his position. Department head. The job I'd never even dreamed of because I'd been too busy proving I deserved the role Marcus had stolen. I said yes immediately. Not because I wanted revenge or power. But because I'd earned it. And because I could make sure no one else in my department would go through what I'd gone through. My first act as department head was implementing a transparent promotion process. Clear criteria, documented evaluations, third-party review. No more backroom deals or family favors. On my first day in Marcus's old office, my office now, I hung my diplomas on the wall. Next to them, I placed a small framed card with a quote I'd found online, "Success is the best revenge." It was a reminder. Not to be bitter or vengeful, but to focus on excellence instead of anger. 6 months into my new role, something unexpected happened. Tyler requested a meeting. I almost said no. What could we possibly have to talk about? But curiosity won out. He came to my office looking different. Less cocky, more humble. The arrogance had been replaced with something that looked like shame. I wanted to apologize, he said, sitting across from my desk. For everything. I knew I didn't deserve that promotion. I knew you did. But I took it anyway because Uncle Marcus offered and I thought I could figure it out. I listened without interrupting. I've been in my new position for 6 months now, he continued. Working under someone who actually makes me do my job. And I realize how much I didn't know. How much I still don't know. He looked up, meeting my eyes. You tried to help me. You covered for my mistakes. And I never thanked you. So, thank you. And I'm sorry. It wasn't enough. An apology couldn't give me back those months of frustration and humiliation. But it was something. I appreciate you saying that, I told Tyler. And I'm glad you're learning now. That's what matters. He nodded, standing to leave. At the door, he paused. For what it's worth, you're a much better boss than my uncle ever was. Everyone says so. After he left, I sat quietly for a moment. I didn't forgive him, not completely. Trust takes time to rebuild, and Tyler had a long way to go. But his apology meant something. It meant he was finally taking responsibility for his actions. That evening, I thought about Marcus too. He'd found a job at a smaller company, according to the industry gossip. No word on whether he was still playing favorites or if he'd learned anything from his fall. Probably not. People like Marcus rarely change. They just find new places where their old tricks still work. But that wasn't my problem anymore. My job was to build something better here. To create a department where hard work actually mattered, where promotions went to people who earned them, where talent was recognized regardless of last names. A year after everything happened, Mrs. Patterson invited me to lunch. Not a business meeting, a personal invitation to celebrate my first anniversary as department head. We went to an upscale restaurant downtown, the kind of place I'd only been to for important client dinners. Over salads and iced tea, she told me something I hadn't known. I knew about Marcus's nepotism before you submitted those reports, she admitted. I'd been getting complaints from other departments. People who had to work with Tyler and were frustrated by his incompetence. I was surprised. Then why didn't you do something sooner? Because I needed proof, she explained. Marcus was smart enough to cover his tracks in official documents. Everything looked fine on paper. Your reports gave me the evidence I needed to act. She smiled. You did exactly what I was hoping someone would do. You documented everything, stayed professional, and let the facts speak for themselves. It was a strange feeling, knowing I'd been a pawn in a larger game. But also satisfying, knowing my strategy had worked. I want you to know something else, Mrs. Patterson continued. You're being considered for Vice President of Operations when Arnold retires next year. I nearly choked on my water. Vice President? That was 3 levels above where I'd started. I don't know what to say, I managed. Say you'll think about it, she replied. You've proven you can lead under pressure. You've shown integrity when it would have been easier to be bitter. And you've transformed a struggling department into one of our most productive. Those are the qualities we need in leadership. The rest of lunch passed in a blur. We talked about other things, industry trends, company strategy, her plans for expansion. But my mind kept circling back to that offer. Vice President. Not because of connections or luck, but because of merit. The meal ended with Mrs. Patterson's assistant calling about an urgent matter. As we parted ways, she shook my hand firmly. Think about my offer, Samantha. And keep doing what you're doing. That evening, I called my mom. I'd been so focused on work that I hadn't talked to her in weeks. I told her everything, the promotion that was stolen, the patient plan for justice, the vindication, and now this new opportunity. I'm so proud of you, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Not just because you succeeded, but because of how you succeeded. You didn't become bitter. You didn't give up. You just kept being excellent. We talked for an hour, catching up on family news and life beyond work. When I hung up, I realized something. The last year hadn't just been about getting revenge or proving a point. It had been about discovering who I really was. Not the person who accepted injustice quietly. Not the person who played political games or cut corners. But someone who believed in doing things the right way, even when the right way was harder. Someone who trusted that excellence would eventually win. That version of myself was stronger than I'd known. The next few months brought more changes. I accepted Mrs. Patterson's offer to be considered for vice president. Arnold's retirement was announced officially, and my name appeared on the short list of candidates. I continued running my department, focusing on developing my team and delivering results. Marcus's name came up occasionally in industry circles. He'd been fired from his new company after just 6 months, apparently for the same favoritism issues. Some people never learn. Tyler, surprisingly, was doing better. His new manager was tough but fair, and Tyler was finally learning what it meant to actually work for success. I saw him occasionally in the building, and he always nodded respectfully. One afternoon, I ran into Heather from accounting in the parking lot. "You know what I love about working here now?" she said. "I feel like effort actually matters. Like if I work hard and do a good job, people will notice." That comment stuck with me. Because that's what this had all been about. Creating a workplace where merit mattered more than connections. 6 weeks later, Mrs. Patterson called me to her office again. I knew before she said anything. Her smile gave it away. "Congratulations, Vice President Reed," she said, extending her hand. The board voted unanimously. "You start in your new role next month." I shook her hand, professional and composed on the outside, celebrating wildly on the inside. This was it. The ultimate vindication. From overlooked employee to vice president in less than 2 years. Not because I'd schemed or manipulated or played dirty. But because I'd documented my excellence, stayed professional under pressure, and trusted that the truth would win eventually. That evening, I sat in my apartment, the same apartment where I'd drunk wine and plotted strategy all those months ago. I thought about calling people to celebrate, but instead I just sat quietly, letting the victory sink in. Marcus had tried to destroy my career. Instead, he'd pushed me to fight harder, document better, and ultimately rise higher than I'd ever imagined possible. The best revenge really was success. And mine tasted absolutely perfect.